Hey everyone, it's Jack, and today I'm going to take a look at Arcolinux Arco BSPWM from the Arco B ISO. So, what inspired this? You did, John T.1364. He left me a comment after I did my review on Exodia OS BSPWM, and he happened to say, "Oh, let me get this straight. You already have to fix something not even 2 minutes in. Great endorsement for a piece of crap, dude. I'll stick with Arco." Well, that's right to the point. But to be fair to Exodia, of course, the issue that he's referring to, barely 2 minutes in, was something related to the virtual environment and had nothing to do with my actual hardware. I did do an install of Exodia on some hardware, and I actually lived in it for about a week, and it worked great. And that error message was not there on hardware, so it was just a VM thing. Yeah, you could argue that VMs should have been taken into consideration. However, it was a minor little thing and really had nothing to do with the performance of the distro. The distro was actually really great. But with all that said, John did kind of inspire me here a little bit. Even though I was initially taken back with the thought of, "You dare to question my greatness?" I don't blame you. But anyway, this actually inspired me to take a look at Arcolinux, because Arcolinux has always been a favorite of mine. I've played around with Arcolinux way back. It was actually my first alternative to Manjaro, if I remember right, because my first experience on Arch was not with Arch, but with Manjaro. And so when I started to expand out, probably a year or so later, Arcolinux was the first thing I tried, and wow, I've always been impressed with it. I've rarely had any kind of issues I couldn't deal with. And so I got to thinking, you know what? I bet they probably do have a pretty darn good BSPWM release, something I've never looked at before ever. So with that said, I just gotta look. So thanks, John. I'm gonna do that right now. So here I am out at the Arcolinux B website, because I might as well just get the B ISO. That's already set up for you. I know Arcolinux has a lot of different editions, D and A and A.5.
And 3 and 7 and 8 and 25.
But anyway, I usually like going with the B edition files because they're just kind of ready-made live ISOs that you can get on there and preview in their desktop. And as you can see out here at the website, they got tons of desktops available. So no shortage of stuff to try out, that's for sure. And of course, I'll be targeting BSPWM, so enough of my babbling and yapping and all that. Let's just get out there and try it out. I'm going to click on this guy, BSPWM here. Here's all our files that go with it, and all we really need is the ISO right here on top. So I'm going to click that, load it in, and then I'll be right back. Okay, here we are at our live screen, live ISO. I'm going to go with the first choice here, which is boot Arcolinux B open source BIOS without x86 vid and all that other stuff. And this ought to take just a couple of seconds to boot in here. It's got to load in all the live ISO stuff here. Being a lightweight desktop, it's probably not going to take too long to boot, but you never know. And so we're getting there. For me, Arcolinux has always been reliable. I rarely ever have any issues with Arcolinux, and when I do, they have all kinds of great utilities that make it really easy. So if you forget some of those command line solutions to get out of something, their utilities are GUI based and offer a great workaround, a great quick way to get at it. Like when you got to update your Pac-Man keys or something like that. So this ought to be showing up any second now. And there we go. Nice. So we got our welcome screen here, and our BSPWM looks really great. It looks like they have Polybar going on up here on the top, I'm assuming. And really nice looking layout here. And I see instead of having numbers, they got all icons going across here, and it looks like there's about 10 there. So that's nice. 10 different desktops. And then our widgets up here on the left-hand side for our audio and memory, CPU, and even our clock. So that's cool. And our Pac-Man manager. So it's even got an updater up here. And so, yeah, looking really good. And then we can see our kernel version up here in the center. And then we got our conky over here on the right-hand side, which is showing some of the system info. But even more importantly, your basic shortcut keys. So that kind of gives you a little bit of... So you have this survival guide here to kind of get started, and that's kind of nice to have the essentials over here in a honky, especially if you're not really familiar with window managers. So you can get into the terminal and the file manager, your browser, editor, and so forth. So that's pretty nice there. And then, of course, here we got our different options to update our mirrors and run gparted. They always kind of recommend to run gparted to set up your disk first. I'm just going to do like an easy install and just let the installer do everything. So I won't need to do all that, but that is a good way to go. Although you can partition your disk in the using calamares as well, and that's typically what I do most of the time if I'm going to do a custom. But gparted does kind of make it easier for some people, and so I'm just going to go with the easy install. The advanced installation just gives you a whole bunch of choices that you can install more software right off the bat. And so I'm going to close out the welcome screen here so we can see more of the stuff here. And I'm just going to hit next because we're good with the defaults, and automatically detected our region and zone. So we're good there. Same with keyboard. And then here I'm just going to select erase disk and just erase over everything. And I guess the defaults are all good here. So maybe I'll just select swap to file as well. And I'm good with ext4. And then here I'm going to hit Toadwick. I'm going to add in my usual Toadwick here and then give it a password. And then we'll just use the same password for administrator account. And I think that's the choices we want to go with. So I'm going to hit next. And so now we got a summary of everything. I'm going to create a new petition and so forth. And then install it on the new ext4 system. I guess I could have gone with Btrfs, but that's okay. I'm going to hit install here. And let's hit install now, because I prefer now than over 20 minutes from now. And I guess I got to click that again. There we go. All right. So there we go. We're off. And so this install shouldn't take too long. I'm going to pause the video and I'll be right back when it's done installing. Or will I? I am back. Oh, it is all finished. I'm going to go ahead and restart, remove the ISO, and then we'll see how it came out. Okay, so far so good. It looks like we got a grub screen here. So I'm going to hit enter, let this boot in, and then in theory, we ought to see a boot screen with Toadwick on it. And there it is. Wow, that was a pretty quick boot up too. So I'm just going to go ahead and log in. And here we go. We're getting in and everything's loading up pretty quick here. So nice. Looking good. And here we have our welcome screen. And our conky is still over here on the right-hand side. So nothing changed too much from the live version, which is good. No surprises. Excellent. And since I'm in a fresh boot up, why don't I just do a quick htop here just to see what our idle speed is. I'm going to temporarily close the welcome screen, open up a console here, just type in htop and see what we got. So we're looking around 520 megs here at idle. Not too shabby. That's all looking good. I'll close that again, bring back up our welcome screen. And I think our D menu is probably going to be Super D, so I'm going to give that a try here. And, oh yeah, that'll work. Okay. So I'm guessing it's called Welcome. And there it is, Arco Welcome. So I'm going to pop that open again. So here right off the bat, we have access to some cool stuff here, such as install software, Linux tweak tool, which is one of my favorite features of Arco. They have a really wonderful tweak tool here. And then update Arch Linux mirrors. And as you can see up here, there's a Pac-Man updater in the upper right corner here, showing updates available. And I should probably click on that and get those out of the way, because anything I install, you want to have an updated system before you start installing software anyway. So I'm just going to kind of let that run while I explore the welcome screen. And this shouldn't take too long anyway. So if we hit our install software button, and I'm just going to answer this real quick. This related to our update. And so now it's upgrading our Linux here. And if I hit install software, I think it'll actually open up Pac-Man. So yeah, I believe that's what it's doing here. So the install software is just going to open up your PAMAC here. And it's already open anyway, doing the updates. I'll just kind of pause the video here, and then when it's done, which only should be a minute, or better yet, I'll just flip this welcome screen over to the next desktop using Super Shift 2, and that sent me over to desktop 2, and that way we can kind of look over stuff while the other thing's running in the background. So let's hit our launch Linux tweak tool here, and I'm going to authenticate. And like I was saying, this is one of my favorite features in Arcolinux is the Arcolinux tweak tool. I think it's pretty cool. And there we are. So I'm just going to move this welcome screen out of the way. I'm going to send that over to desktop 3. And I like how it follows me over when you move it. So that's kind of cool too. So here we got our Arcolinux items here. And of course, the first item here on the list on the left-hand side is ATT, which I believe is Arco Tweak Tool. And so here we can change our icons. We can install different icon themes here. The Sardi icons, surfing, themes. So these are all kind of Arco related themes and icons. So that's really cool. You can go down and check all that you wish or uninstall as well, which is pretty nice. Then we have our auto start settings. So if you can turn on your conky or turn it off if you wish. Conky session. Your clip manager support, welcome app. So if you don't want to see the welcome screen every time, this is another area where you could just switch it off if you wish. And then we got variety, and variety is loading in by default, but you can also turn that off if you don't want to use it. And variety is located up here on the top bar. And so this is our wallpaper app, and we'll explore that in a little bit. So variety is kind of nice for getting wallpapers off the internet and giving you, well, a variety of wallpapers for the background, which is nice. And then here we have some various themes that we can download beyond the Arcolinux themes. And so they have some nice themes in here. The Sweet theme is pretty nice. The Dracula, another one I like. And then, of course, icons, cursors, and even fonts you can choose from. So I really like this too, because that way I don't really have to go looking for some of my favorite fonts, because I can never remember the names anyway. So looking in here, I got them like the TTFMS fonts. I can just simply click on that, and those are the Microsoft fonts. I typically use those a lot in my graphics applications, so that's a nice one. And nerd fonts are another one that I like. So here you got access to these, and all you have to do is just simply check the ones you want and then install the selected, and it's that quick. So now it's showing that they're installed. Easy peasy. Like I said, really makes life easier. Here's access to different desktops. I really like this too, the desktop installer. So if you want to add some different desktops, you can go in here, and this is just an easy way to do it. So you can install Awesome, Berry, Budgie, Cinnamon. You can add all these here. Of course, I wouldn't add all of them, but if you want to pick a desktop or two and just try them out, this is a nice place to do it. Or if you change your mind, you want a different desktop, you can pick a desktop in here and select it and then just hit install. And then you can also install the Arcolinux desktop trasher and get rid of any desktops, including this one. If you decided this one's not for you, you can install another desktop, jump in there, use the trasher, and give it the heave-ho. So yes, another really fantastic feature that I really like. And then here we have our different fixes, which is really handy. So sometimes you come across issues like keyring issues and so forth, and these buttons will just kind of make it real easy. You don't have to remember what those commands were to fix it or what order you should go in and so forth. Everything's kind of done for you through these really handy scripts here. And you can reinstall your keyring, reload your Pac-Man keys. A lot of the issues that are fairly common that people run into from time to time can be addressed right here in the tweak tool. So I really like this. This is another one of my favorites. You can even beef up the number of your parallel downloads for Pac-Man. So instead of going in and editing the file manually, you can just go right here and select it right here, and then it'll modify the Pac-Man comp for you. How cool is that? And then we got our grub settings here. So here you can add or change a grub screen. And so that's the screen that you see when you first turn on your computer, and it gives you the little menu there to boot into Arcolinux. So you can add a background here and make it even more interesting. Cool. And then we got our login here. So these are our different login settings. And right now we're using SDDM for our login manager. And that is really perfect, because if you wanted to add another desktop that was Wayland based, like Hyperland or something, SDDM is a great login manager to use because it's quite compatible. Nice. And then of course you can change different settings in here too, like adding different cursors and installing any missing themes that might be missing and so forth. And if you really hose something up, you can go over here and apply your original config. and then boot automatically. And then here we got our mirrors, so different mirror settings. You can enable the GitLab from the US and all these different repos here from the mirror list. You can toggle them all on and off, which is nice. And then we have our NeoFetch tweaker. So if you're really into NeoFetch in your terminal there, you can kind of use these to tweak your way around and show or not show different items in your NeoFetch. And then our Pacman settings. So this, again, is a GUI front end to your Pacman config. And so you can enable and disable different repos in here. And again, I wouldn't mess with this unless you know what you're doing. However, the defaults are typically what you'd want to go with. But if there's anything else you wanted to add, like say the chaotics repo, it's just as easy as toggling this right here, and you'll have access to the chaotic, which is a repo that has all the binaries of software that's in the AUR, except it's already built, so you don't have to build it or use a helper like Yay or Paru. So that's really kind of cool. Of course, it's not enabled by default because anytime you're messing with the AUR, there's always a possibility there could be a conflict with your standard repos, and you could run into some issues sometimes. And then they even give you access to other repos, which I think is pretty cool. You got Nemesis, Endeavor, Zero Linux. That is cool. So big thumbs up for that. I don't think I remember seeing that the last time I was in Arco, but I could be wrong. And we got your privacy security settings, services. So here you can enable and disable different services or install. So we got Pulse Audio and Pipewire. You can switch between the two if you want, install one or the other or both. And Bluetooth, network services, printing. So if you need special files, typically this stuff should be taken care of by default. But if you got a situation that's kind of unique that you need some extra help with, this is handy. And of course, under printing, you can install your HP, LIP drivers here for HP, which is nice, and that's something I typically would do. And then installing your system config printer. So this really kind of takes the pain out of installing your printer if it's not installed already. And then Samba. So here you can install and set up Samba pretty easily just through the script. Kind of does all the hard stuff for you again. Outstanding. And then your different shells for your terminal, and by default we're in Bash. I like Bash. I'm kind of a Bash person. I prefer that personally over ZSH or Fish, but that's probably just me. And then of course our different terminals here, and so you can add in some more terminals or remove them. Alacrity, XFCE, URXVT, which I think is installed by default, and Termite. And then terminal fun. So these are things you can easily add into your terminals, like NeoFetch and Screen and so forth. So that's kind of cool. Even has color scripts down here. That's neat. I think I'll just open a terminal real quick. That would be Windows Super Enter. And here we got our terminal open, and I'm just going to turn on color scripts and see if it's really that easy. So I'm going to just refresh this again. Just hit clear, I guess. And actually, maybe I need to relaunch that. So I'm just going to close that, Super Q, and then Super Enter again, and nothing. So let me close that. Okay, yeah, I was thinking that was going to give me color scripts right off the bat, so I guess I missed something there. Anyways, we'll see if that shows up a little later. And then we have our themer. So these are some themes you can add to certain desktops. So if you're running Qtile, Left WM, i3, or Awesome, then you can choose from some themes for these desktops. So that's kind of cool too, a quick way to theme these babies up. Nice. And then we got our user settings. So here you can change an account type from administrator to standard and create new accounts and so forth. So this is a nice, easy way to manage accounts as well. So I think that about covers it. I'm going to jump out of this real quick. Super Q to quit. And go back to our first desktop here, and it looks like our updates are all finished, which I'd be surprised if they weren't. I'm going to close that and open the terminal, and no color script. So strange. Apparently the color script maybe isn't in the bash, but I'm pretty sure I've run that before and it just went straight in. So I don't know what I did wrong there. So I guess I'll just manually install it. So we'll just do a pacman-f color script and authenticate. No, okay, during our read, there's a problem right there. So during the update there, we got some the PGP software issues there. And so this kind of brings me back to the tweak tool. These are the things with the unknown signatures. So if I go back to our second desktop, which was Super 2, and then I open up our tweak tool again, which I closed. So I'm just going to go in D menu and type in tweak, open up our tweak tool. Because since we have the tool, we might as well take advantage of the convenience, right? So we don't have to mess with remembering the commands. So let's go to fixes and let's just see how well this works. So I'm thinking probably Pac-Man keys. So I'm going to go over here and fix the keys. So let's hit that. And now it's kind of doing its thing, reappending and reloading the keys. And this ought to give us better GPG signatures. And this would only take a second. And then with luck, it'll all work again. And we're getting there. This typically takes a minute or two to do. But it looks like it's kind of going through this pretty smoothly so far. And it's done, actually. So we'll close that window. Super 1 over to desktop 1, and let's just repeat that. Actually, let's do this. Let's do an SYYU. And so we got through that okay. So before I do the color script, why don't I just come back here and go back to Terminal Fun, toggle that off, and then toggle it back on. And let's see if it just worked itself out now that we got that hopefully fixed. I'm going to open up my terminal again, and there's the color script. So that solved the problem. Excellent. So there we go. We got our keys fixed thanks to that handy fixes utility there in our tweak tool. So there's a real live example of why this tool is just so useful. I really like it. And it really made it easy to install the color scripts. How cool is that? So there we go. Nice. And since I'm in here, let's just take a look at our config. So like if I do an ls.config/bspwm, that's where our config files should be located, and they are there. Excellent. And in fact, I'm going to do this through Thunar, so we just have a more graphical way of kind of seeing the layout, and that was the wrong way. So Thunar, if I remember right, is Super Shift Enter. There we go, instead of Super Enter, which is the console. So I was kind of getting them mixed up. I kind of have my own custom key binding for Thunar. I just use Super T myself. It's just kind of easier for me to remember. But this is good. Super Shift Enter. That I see logic in that as well. So I'm going to press Control H to show my hidden files. And so here we have our dot files. Probably dot files is more accurate. And I'm going to go into our config folder. And then here we have our BSPWM. So this is where our config files are. And here I see our sxhkd, which is our keyboard handler here. So this would be the file that handles your keyboard shortcuts. So if I were to open this, and let's see what we can open that with. We can open it with Vim. I'm going to install Genie in here because that's just going to make it easier for making the video to have the tabs side by side, so we can just kind of switch back and forth between config files. So for this video, this is going to be a lot easier to make sense of when you can just quickly switch back and forth. So I'm going to go in here and do a sudo pacman -S Genie, and we'll install that. It's one of my favorite GUI based editors here. And there we go. So now I think I'm just going to switch over to desktop 3 here, and we'll close the welcome screen. And then I'm going to do Super D for our D menu and just type in Genie, and we'll open that up. Cool. And it looks like there's no theming there. You can get those online there, the different Genie themes, and just kind of add them in to your config folder. But yeah, I guess I can live with a white screen there for a while. Kind of blinding though. That's where Vim is kind of nice. So I'm going to just right click here. I guess it's already associated. So here's our keyboard files here, which is nice. I'm going to just zoom in a little bit to make that a little easier to see. And so here you can see our keyboard shortcuts, and it looks like it's really sorted, very orderly and nice. So here we have our super function keys. So these are apps you can open using super and function. And I don't know if Inkscape's actually installed or if that's a placeholder, but if I hit super F3, let's see if it opens. and nothing because, yeah, it's not actually installed, but it's great that they have these placeholders so we could just actually use those if we wanted to. And then some of these are installed, of course. Rofi, Super F12, and that brings up our Rofi screen here. And then Super Keys, so you can open some of the same apps just using Super plus a letter combination, such as Atom. Atom, I wonder if that's installed. That's a pretty good editor, actually. Not installed. Here you can toggle your conky using Super Key C. So if I was over here and I wanted to turn off my conky, I could use Super Key, and it turns off over there. And then if you want it back on to refer to something, it comes up over here. Oh, okay. So, yeah, I guess you gotta use your conky something else there to put that where you want it. Quite all right. So I'm gonna just Control Q out of that. So you have all kinds of access to stuff, your PAV, your pulse audio, U control here, and that's up here actually on your volume control. If you roll your mouse wheel, you can control your volume here, moving it up and down, or if you click on it, then it will, if you right click, if you click on it, it'll mute. But if you right click, then it'll open up your PAV U control here, I guess, whatever you want to call it. So easy access to it right there, which is nice. But as it shows here, you can also use Super V and launch it as well. And then, of course, our Alacrity terminal, which is Super Return. And then you can add other things in here. For example, if you didn't want to use, say, the Super F3 key for Inkscape, you could come down here. And, of course, I don't have Inkscape installed right now. But if I did, I could just come down here and just kind of copy the format that we see on the other key bindings. Just do a hashtag Inkscape. That's our comment to just give us a reference. And then we could also do a super plus and then a letter like maybe I. See if there's any I's in here. Yeah, so I think I might be available. And then we just go to our next line, tab over, and just type in Inkscape. And that would do the trick. Of course, I'd want to install it. So if I could come over here and just did a sudo pacman -s Inkscape, we could install that real quick and give it a yes. And now if I come over to a nice area and just hit Super I, it should open if it doesn't conflict with anything. Oh wait, I forgot. I gotta reload the config. So that would be Super Shift S to reload the keyboard config here for keyboard settings. And then I can do Super I. And there we go. We have our Inkscape loading right in. So working beautifully. That's how easy it is to do key bindings. Piece of cake. For those of you that might not be familiar with BSPWM or window managers in general. And it looks like our theming is just perfect here on Inkscape. So that's looking good. Glad to see that. Super Q to quit. And so here we got all kinds of different options here. Super Shift key, Control Alt keys. So everything is really beautifully organized here. Just so easy to kind of have it all organized. And then we got variety keys with Pywall and so forth. Your screenshot settings. So Control Shift Print for GNOME screenshot. XFCE4 screen shooter. That's one of my favorite ones. That would simply be Control Print. Nice. And then our multimedia key bindings and things that are desktop specific here, related to full screen tiling. So you can, Super P will pseudo tile, Super F goes into full screen mode. Nice. You got your Super Alt key combination. So just a ton of stuff. And like I said, very, very organized. And then you got your AZRERTY, and that's for different type of keyboards that are not QWERTY. And so not really relevant to somebody like me that's in the US and in many parts of the world. So let's see what else we got. So over here we got our BSPWMrc, which probably has our rules in there. So I'm just gonna actually quit that because I want to open that in Genie as well. And so now we have we can switch back and forth between our keyboard settings and our rules here. So here we got all kinds of stuff. And this RC file has a lot of rules in here. These are our padding settings, adjusting our spaces in between windows and so forth, coloring and so forth. and then it's settings for single monitor. And if you have dual monitors, you can play with it here. And then our full screen application. So here it's got a rule that opens Inkscape into full screen mode automatically. So this is where you can kind of designate that. And then other applications are set for floating. So if you want a floating window rather than something that opens in full screen or is tiled, then you can designate that right here. So that's where all the rules go. So very easy, very simple, nothing complicated to try to figure out what's located where. So I do like that. I like the fact that it's just simple. We got our key bindings here, beautifully organized, and then our rules, easy access right here in our RC file. So I like that. And then up here we got our Polybar. And so if we want to change our Polybar settings, of course, I would just go back into our tuner here, and we could back out into the config folder and then find Polybar. And so this is our Polybar folder. And here we have scripts, and then we got our config file for our Polybar. If we look in scripts here, we got different things. And these are some of the scripts that pertain to the items up here, these modules in the Polybar, such as our volume control and so forth. And then we got some Spotify, and we got a weather app here, which is really cool. So nice. Those are different options. And those are all kind of in the config file here. So if we go in our config file, we can see we got settings, for example, for our background and our different color settings. So our background settings are here, and our foreground is here. So if I wanted to change, for example, our background, we would just go over here and change these numbers. So if I change that 34 to something like 99 and then Control S to save it, then you can see our bar up here all of a sudden turn green. So yes, that corresponds to our background. I'm going to go ahead and change that back to 34 and save it. Control S. Yeah, those are settings where you can tweak the colors here. And in fact, tweaking colors, having a color picker or chooser is really handy when you're kind of messing with colors here, if you're wanting to go in and tweak things on your Polybar. And then down here, we got different configurations here for all these different desktops. So how cool is that too? So if you move over to i3 or some other desktop, Qtile, it's already taken care of here in the Polybar if you're going to use Polybar with some of these other desktops, which you probably would with something like OpenBox and maybe even an i3 and so forth. So how cool. And then, of course, we have our BSPWM main bar here. So in main bar here, we got different things that pertain to our border size and so forth. And then here's our modules. So this is the one that I would probably want to focus on too, is here we got our BSPWM X window. So these are our different desktops up here that we got access to. And over here, we got our kernel module here, showing our current kernel. And then over here on the right, this would be our module right. So modules right starts off with their volume control, memory, CPU, and date. So these are all right here, easy access. And then if you want to add other modules, we would just type them in here to add them in. For example, weather. We could type in weather here, put a space, and then save it. And then our weather module pops up right here. Of course, it's showing a bad status code because you would have to go into the Python module and put in probably your city code and API key, because this is actually connected to weather, openweather.org. So you would have to do that, and that would actually just involve jumping in here, going into your scripts, and then opening up your weather.py. And then here it shows the link to your open weather map. And so you would just simply copy that link there, and then you would change your city code or your API key right here, which is pretty easy peasy. And then if you want to use the imperial for your units instead of centigrade, then here you would simply change metric to imperial. And then your unit key would change to F. And then that'll show F in front of after your temperature rather than C. Excellent. So that's how easy it is to do that. And then if you change your mind, you don't want it there, you can simply take it out. Or you could put it somewhere else in the stack, like over here at the end. And then when you save it, it'll show up at the end. Nice. So those are your different modules. And then, of course, you got your extras down here, extra settings, colors and backgrounds and so forth. And then, of course, our other desktops, BSPWM and Worm and so forth. And if you keep going down and get past all the different desktops that are available, then you'll see your modules for your different desktops. And here's modules for BSPWM. And as you can see over here for our right-hand module, our BSPWM, we got our icons here, and these are the icons that correspond to the desktop that you're seeing up there in the left corner. And so that's really nice. And then here you can actually change your state as well. So for example, if you wanted to see numbers up there instead of icons, you could just come down here, like for example under empty, and change icons to index. Like that. And then when you hit save, these will all change to numbers. And so now you got numbers up there instead. And then of course you can change your padding. If you want the numbers farther apart, you could increase your padding. And I think that might be where the padding is. Yeah, there you go. And so now it would be 4. So you can spread them out a bit by doing that. So very flexible. These are all the different things that you can do. And you can also have it so if you have items in here, you could have numbers for empty and then icons for occupied, or an icon and an index. You can put both in there and then show the number and the icon as well. And of course you can change different colors. So if you want to change the foreground color of your icons when something's highlighted, then you can do that as well. You can add underlines and so forth. So very easy to tweak, just really nice. And then these are all our separate modules here that you can refer to. So we have our backlight module. If you want to add a brightness, you would simply add backlight into where we were before when we typed in weather. Instead of weather, we could type in backlight and it'll put in a backlight control, or a battery indicator, CPU, which is already up there, date, which is our clock and date up there. So lots of modules to choose from, and these are where they're all located. There's the kernel module, which you see up here in the center, how much memory is available and so forth, media player, updates, Spotify, so you can add Spotify in there. And there's our weather module, I think. Temperature, okay, our temperature for CPU, I believe, variety, and all that. So everything is all right in here, just many things to choose from. And so really, I've just kind of hit the tip of the iceberg here. There is so much time you could spend tweaking in here. And of course, we got our variety, so we could pop in here and we could click our wallpaper selector, and then we can select a background, which is really nice, and lots of things to choose from. These are cool. I could pick a wallpaper right there. And then if I go to another empty desktop, it has appeared. And so now we got a beautiful background. I am loving it. You can do all kinds of settings with Variety, but Variety downloads wallpaper from sources off the internet too, so you're almost never going to be short of great images to use. And I think I kind of covered it all for this. I didn't want to hurt your brain too much with config files, but I got to tell you, this is really looking great. And in our D menu, you can kind of see a lot of the software that's on here by default. And it's not loaded too heavily with software, which is good. It gives you a lot of room to install your own stuff and your own apps. And of course, during the install, you did have the desktop, the more advanced install, where you can choose all kinds of software at time of install rather than having to deal with it afterwards. So lots of options, and Arcolinux has never disappointed me. It still hasn't disappointed me, and this version of BSPWM is really fantastic. I like this distro with the BSPWM desktop. Definitely something I would daily drive for sure. I'm really liking this, and I'm probably going to load it on some hardware and just play with it and maybe live in it for a while. So there you go. I hope this was semi-inspiring, or at least some fraction thereof. And if it was, don't forget to hit that thumbs up and hit subscribe. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.